The August sun hung merciless over the Grant Ranch, a copper disk that turned the New Mexico desert into a furnace. Caroline Grant stood on the porch of the weathered adobe house, shading her eyes as she watched the last of their cattle struggle toward the nearly dry water trough. The beasts moved slowly, their ribs showing through dust-caked hides, heads hanging low in the heat. "That's all we got left, Miss Caroline." Old Pete wheezed from beside the corral fence. He'd been her father's foreman for 20 years, and now he was the only hand who hadn't drifted off to find work that actually paid. Rest of them died or wandered off looking for water. Caroline nodded, not trusting herself to speak. 3 months since her father had been thrown from his horse and broke his neck. 3 months of watching everything he'd built crumble like adobe in the rain. The bank wanted their payment. The hired hands wanted their wages. And all she had were dying cattle and dirt that wouldn't grow anything but sage and despair. "You should sell, Miss Caroline," Pete said, not for the first time. "That banker Wilson, he'd give you enough to start fresh somewhere else, maybe back east where your ma's people were from." "This is my home," she said quietly. "Pa wouldn't want me to give up." Pete spat tobacco juice into the dust. "Your pa's dead, girl, and pride don't fill empty bellies." As darkness fell, Caroline sat at the scarred wooden table, counting coins by lamplight. $17.32. Not enough to pay Pete, let alone the bank. She'd already sold her mother's silver, the goods saddle, anything that wasn't nailed down. Tomorrow she'd have to let Pete go, and then she'd be truly alone. The sound came just after midnight, a soft thud from the barn, followed by what might have been a groan. Caroline's hand found the shotgun by the door before she was fully awake. Stock thieves, probably. Or worse, Comancheros looking for easy pickings. She slipped out the back door, bare feet silent on the packed earth. The barn door stood slightly ajar, though she knew she'd barred it at sundown. Heart pounding, she eased through the gap, shotgun raised. Moonlight filtered through the gaps in the roof, painting silver stripes across the hay-strewn floor. At first she saw nothing unusual. Then movement in the corner caught her eye, a dark shape huddled against the wall. "Stand up slow," she commanded, surprised her voice didn't shake. "Hands where I can see them." The figure stirred, and she heard a sharp intake of breath. Can't stand." The voice was rough, male, tinged with pain. Caroline moved closer, keeping the shotgun trained on him. As her eyes adjusted, details emerged from the shadows. A man, sprawled in the hay, dark stains on his shirt that could only be blood, a gun belt, but the holster empty. His face turned toward her, and she saw eyes that glittered like chips of obsidian in the moonlight. "You're hurt," she said unnecessarily. "Notice that, did you?" Despite everything, there was a thread of dry humor in his voice. "Got myself ambushed. Barely made it here." "Who are you?" He was quiet for a moment, as if weighing his options. "Name's Jesse Colton." Caroline's breath caught. She'd heard that name whispered in the general store, seen it on wanted posters. Train robber, killer, worth $500 dead or alive. "I know who you are," she said, finger tightening on the trigger. "Then you know I'm worth more to you alive than dead." He shifted slightly and groaned. "Though I might save you the trouble of deciding. Feels like I'm bleeding out anyway." She should shoot him, or at least tie him up and ride for the sheriff at first light. $500 would save the ranch, pay Pete, maybe even buy some new stock. It was the smart thing to do. The right thing. But something in his eyes stopped her. Not fear, she'd expected fear. Not even defiance, just a bone-deep weariness. As if he'd been running so long he'd forgotten what it felt like to stop. "How bad?" she heard herself ask. "Bullet still in there, left side, under the ribs. Lost a lot of blood." Caroline lowered the shotgun slightly. "Why here? Why my barn?" "Saw the light from your window. Figured I'd rather die under a roof than out in the desert." He coughed, and she saw dark liquid on his lips. "Didn't mean to bring trouble to your door. Ma'am, I'll move on if you want. You can't even stand. I've crawled before." The words were matter-of-fact, without self-pity, and somehow that decided her. She set the shotgun aside and knelt beside him. His shirt was soaked with blood, the fabric sticking to his skin. When she peeled it back, he hissed through his teeth but didn't cry out. The wound was ugly, but not immediately fatal. She'd seen worse, helped her father tend injured ranch hands. "Bullet needs to come out," she said, "and the wound cleaned, or infection will kill you sure as any rope." Why? He was watching her with those dark eyes. Why not collect the bounty? Caroline sat back on her heels. Why indeed? "Maybe I'm tired of death," she said finally. "Buried my PA 3 months ago. My ma before that. Maybe I don't want any more ghosts on this land." She stood. Decision made. "I'll get water and bandages. You'll stay in the barn. I don't want you in my house. 3 days, that's all. Soon as you can ride, you're gone. And if I can't trust you, then you'll die here instead of somewhere else. Your choice." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded slightly. 3 days. Caroline gathered what she needed, the last of her father's whiskey. Clean cloth torn from an old petticoat, a knife sterilized in flame. Jesse barely made a sound as she worked, though sweat beaded on his forehead and his jaw clenched tight enough to crack teeth. "You've done this before," he said when she'd finished binding the wound. "Ranch life. Things need tending. Animals, men, doesn't much matter." She wiped her bloody hands on her skirt. "There's water in that bucket, and I'll bring food in the morning. Don't try to leave. You'll tear those stitches and bleed out before you make it a mile. Wouldn't dream of it. Ma'am?" She picked up the shotgun and started for the door, then paused. "Is someone coming after you? Should I be watching for riders? Had 3 on my trail, but I lost them in the canyons. They'll figure I'm dead by now. Man can't last long in this desert with a bullet in him. Lucky for you, I'm not most people." "No," he said quietly. "You're not." Caroline returned to the house but didn't sleep. She sat by the window, shotgun across her lap, watching the barn. What had she done? Harboring a wanted man, risking everything for someone who'd probably rob her blind the moment he could stand. Her father would have called her 10 kinds of fool. But her mother had always said the measure of a person wasn't in their past, but in the choices they made when it mattered. And tonight, for reasons she couldn't fully explain, letting Jesse Colton live had mattered. As dawn broke over the desert, painting the mountains purple and gold, Caroline made coffee with the last of her grounds. She'd check on her patient, then ride to town for supplies. Let people see her going about her business as usual. No one needed to know about the dangerous man bleeding in her barn, or the way his eyes had looked in the moonlight, empty and haunted and somehow exactly like her own. Caroline barely slept that night, jerking awake at every coyote howl and wind rattle. When dawn finally broke, she carried a plate of biscuits and dried beef to the barn, along with more water and fresh bandages. She half expected to find Jesse gone or dead, but he was sitting up against the wall, his color better though still pale beneath his sun-weathered skin. "Morning," he said, attempting to straighten as she entered. "Don't move. You'll tear the stitches." She set the plate within his reach. "How's the pain?" "Had worse." He picked up a biscuit, ate it slowly. "Thank you." Caroline changed his bandages, noting with relief that the bleeding had stopped. His skin was warm but not feverish. As she worked, she was aware of him watching her, those dark eyes following her movements. "Why aren't you afraid of me?" he asked suddenly. She paused, considering. Should I be? Most folks would say yes. Most folks haven't been where I am. She tied off the fresh bandage. When you've lost everything that matters, a wanted man in your barn doesn't seem so frightening. That afternoon, she found him standing by the barn door, gripping the frame for support. "I told you not to move," she said sharply. "Can't stay down forever. Need to get my strength back." He took a tentative step, winced. "Your 3 days won't mean much if I can't sit a horse when they're up." Against her better judgment, she offered her shoulder for support. He leaned on her carefully, as if afraid his weight would break her. They made a slow circuit of the barn, his breathing harsh but determined. "There's a rattler under your water trough," he said as they passed the door. Caroline froze. "What?" "Saw it slither under there this morning. Big one, by the sound of it." She helped him back to his makeshift bed, then fetched a long-handled hoe. Sure enough, a thick diamondback lay coiled in the shade beneath the trough. One strike with the hoe severed its head cleanly. "Good eye," Jessie said when she told him it was done. "And a good hand with that hoe. Ranch life," she said again, but she was impressed he'd noticed the danger from inside the barn. The next morning, she woke to find him in the corral with her few remaining cattle. He moved slowly, favoring his left side, but he'd somehow gotten them lined up at the trough and was examining each one. "What are you doing?" She hurried over, alarmed. "That brindle cow's got foot rot, needs tending or she'll go lame." He pointed to another. "The calf's dehydrated worse than the others. Might save him if you separate him out. Give him extra water mixed with a little molasses if you've got it." Caroline stared at him. "You know cattle?" "Worked plenty of ranches between other things." His mouth twisted in what might have been self-mockery. "Honest work, when I could get it." She watched him handle the animals, his touch gentle despite his reputation. "Why didn't you stay with it? The honest work." Jessie was quiet for a moment, running his hand along a cow's flank. "You ever see a man hanged, Miss Grant?" The question caught her off guard. "No. I have watched them string up my brother when he was 17. Said he stole a horse, but he was just holding it for a friend. Didn't matter. Town wanted someone to blame for their troubles. And a Mexican boy with no connections was easy pickings." His voice was flat, matter of fact, but Caroline heard the old pain beneath it. "So you turned outlaw?" "So I killed the men who hanged him." He looked at her then, his eyes hard. "Shot them down one by one, just like they say on those wanted posters. After that," he shrugged. "Once you're marked as a killer, might as well be one." Caroline should have been horrified. Instead, she found herself thinking of her father, broken at the bottom of a cliff. If someone had pushed him, if it hadn't been an accident, what would she have done? "I'll get the molasses," she said quietly. They worked together to treat the animals, Jessie directing despite his injury, Caroline following his instructions. By noon, the brindle's hoof was cleaned and wrapped, the weak calf isolated with enriched water. "You shouldn't be doing this," she said as he leaned against the fence, face gray with exhaustion. "You'll make yourself worse." "Maybe, but your cattle might live now." He met her eyes. "That's something, isn't it? Keeping something alive instead of killing it?" That evening, she brought him supper in the barn, beans and cornbread, the last of her coffee. He was lying down again, one arm across his ribs. "Overdid it," he admitted. "I could have told you that." She set the plate down harder than necessary. "What good does it do if you die trying to save my cattle? At least they'd outlive me. That's more legacy than I've got now." The bitterness in his voice made her pause. She sat on a hay bale, studying him. "How long have you been running?" 3 years, give or take, since my brother died." "Don't you have anyone? Family? Friends?" "Had a partner once. We rode together after everything went bad. Trusted him like a brother." His jaw tightened. "He sold me out for the bounty. Led me right into an ambush. Smiled while he did it." "Is that how you got shot?" "Part of it. I got away, but not clean." He touched his side gingerly. "Been running since, town to town, job to job when I could find work. Always looking over my shoulder." Caroline understood that kind of loneliness. Since her parents died, she'd felt like a ghost, haunting her own life. "It's no way to live." "No," he agreed. "It's not." They sat in companionable silence as darkness fell. Through the barn door, Caroline could see the first stars appearing in the desert sky. Her mother used to say the stars were holes in heaven, letting the light shine through. She wondered if Jessie's brother could see him through those holes, if he approved of what his death had wrought. "I should go," she said finally. "Miss Grant." Jesse's voice stopped her at the door. Why did you really help me? The truth this time. Caroline turned back, meeting his gaze in the lamplight. Because when I saw you lying there, bleeding and alone, I didn't see an outlaw. I saw someone who'd lost everything, just like me, and I thought maybe saving you might mean I could save myself too. And if you can't, save yourself, then at least I'll have tried. That's more than I've done in months. She left him then, but found herself at her window again, watching the barn. Tomorrow was his third day. He'd leave, and she'd be alone again with her dying ranch and dwindling hopes. The thought shouldn't have bothered her. She'd been alone before he came. But somehow, his presence, dangerous as it was, had made the emptiness bearable. In the morning, she'd have to decide whether to let him go or ask him to stay. Either choice felt like stepping off a cliff in the dark. But then, she'd been falling for months now. At least this way, she might choose her landing. The sound of hoofbeats woke Caroline before dawn on the third day. She grabbed her shotgun and peered through the window, heart racing. A lone rider was approaching from the east, badge glinting in the early light. Deputy Marshal Harlan. She'd seen him in town. A hard-faced man with pale eyes and a reputation for bringing in bounties dead rather than alive. Caroline dressed quickly, mind working. Jesse was still in the barn, probably asleep. If she could intercept Harlan, convince him to move on. She stepped onto the porch as he reined up, arranging her face into what she hoped was calm curiosity. Deputy, you're out early. Miss Grant. He touched his hat brim, but his eyes were already scanning the property. Sorry to disturb you. I'm tracking a fugitive, Jesse Colton. He's wanted for murder. I've seen the posters. Word is he was shot up pretty bad 3 days back. Couldn't have gotten far. Harlan's gaze lingered on the barn. You seen any strangers around? Maybe someone looking for help? Caroline's mouth went dry, but she held his stare. No strangers. Just me and old Pete, and he left yesterday. Couldn't pay him anymore. Mind if I look around? Man in Colton's condition might have holed up anywhere. You're welcome to check. The words came out steady, though her pulse thundered in her ears. Not much to see, just a failing ranch and empty buildings. Harlan dismounted, hand resting on his pistol. I'll start with the barn. Caroline followed, praying Jesse had heard the horses and hidden himself. The barn door creaked as Harlan pushed it open. Sunlight slanted across empty stalls and scattered hay. No sign of Jesse or his makeshift bed. Like I said, Caroline managed. Nothing here. But Harlan was examining the ground, boot prints in the dust. His eyes narrowed. Someone's been walking around in here. Recent, too. That'd be me. I check on what's left of my stock every morning. He studied her for a long moment, and she forced herself not to look away. Finally, he moved deeper into the barn, checking each stall, even climbing to peer into the loft. Caroline's hands trembled as she gripped the shotgun. Satisfied? She asked when he climbed down. For now. But his expression said otherwise. Colton's dangerous. Miss Grant, if you do see him, don't try to be a hero. Man's killed 7 people that we know of. I'll keep that in mind. Harlan headed for his horse, then turned back. Funny thing, though, found blood on the trail about 3 miles south. Looked like someone hurt bad took shelter in them rocks. But the trail just ended, like he vanished into thin air. Caroline said nothing. Course, a woman alone out here might be tempted by the bounty. $500 could save a place like this. His smile was thin, unpleasant. Or maybe she'd be tempted by something else. Colton's got away with the ladies. They say, handsome devil, even with that Mexican blood. Heat flooded Caroline's face. I think you should leave now. Deputy? Just saying. Some women got a weakness for dangerous men. Makes them feel alive. Maybe, especially when they're grieving. His eyes glittered. But that kind of feeling can get a woman killed. Or worse. Good day, Deputy Harlan. He mounted up, tipped his hat again. I'll be around. Miss Grant, this is the only ranch for miles, and wounded men need water. He'll turn up. His gaze swept the property once more. They always do. Caroline watched until he was a dust cloud on the horizon, then ran to the barn. "Jesse?" A section of floorboards lifted, and he crawled out from the hiding space beneath. Sweat beaded his forehead, and fresh blood spotted his bandages. "You have a root cellar under here," she said, amazed. "Found it yesterday while you were in the house. Your PA dug it well." He grimaced, pressing a hand to his side. "Though climbing in and out wasn't my best idea. Let me look at that." She helped him to the hay pile, checking his wound. The stitches held, but barely. "You can't keep this up." Harlan's suspicious. "He'll be back. Then I should go. Tonight. You can barely stand. Riding will kill you. Better than bringing trouble to your door." He caught her hand as she reached for fresh bandages. "You lied for me. Why?" Caroline looked at their joined hands, his dark and scarred, hers work-roughened but pale. "I don't know." "That's not good enough. Not anymore." His thumb traced her knuckles. "Harlan's right. I'm dangerous. I've done terrible things. I'm everything they say I am." "No." She pulled her hand free, angry suddenly. "You're not everything they say. A killer wouldn't have warned me about that snake. Wouldn't have doctored my cattle. Wouldn't look at me like—" "Like what?" "Like you understand what it's like to lose everything and keep breathing anyway." They stared at each other in the dusty light. Then Jesse looked away. "Understanding doesn't make me good. Caroline, doesn't change what I am. Maybe not, but it makes you human." That evening, the storm came. Desert storms were sudden and violent. The sky turned green-black. Wind howled through the canyon, and rain fell in sheets that turned the dusty ground to mud. Caroline fought to get the cattle into shelter while thunder crashed overhead. She was soaked through when she finally stumbled back to the house. The barn door banged in the wind, and she realized Jesse was out there alone, probably cold and definitely in pain. Without thinking, she grabbed blankets and ran through the rain. She found him trying to secure the loose door, favoring his injured side. "What are you doing?" she shouted over the storm. "Keeping your barn from blowing away." He shouted back. Together they fought the door closed and barred it. Inside, they stood dripping and breathless. Lightning illuminated Jesse's face, and Caroline saw he was shaking. "You're freezing." She wrapped a blanket around his shoulders. "And probably feverish. This was stupid. Couldn't let your barn get damaged. You've lost enough." His words, his stubborn kindness despite everything, broke something in her. "Stop it," she said fiercely. "Stop acting like you care what happens to me. I do care." The words seemed torn from him. "God help me, I care. That's why I have to leave." "I don't want you to leave." The admission hung between them like lightning. "I know I should. I know you're dangerous and I'm a fool. But I haven't felt anything but numb since Pa died. Then you showed up, bleeding in my barn, and suddenly I could feel again, even if it's fear or anger or whatever this is." "Caroline," her name on his lips was half prayer, half warning. "I'm so tired of being alone," she whispered. "Aren't you?" Thunder crashed directly overhead. In the flash that followed, she saw his control break. He pulled her against him, his mouth finding hers with desperate hunger. She kissed him back, tasting rain and desperation, and something wild that matched the storm outside. His hands tangled in her wet hair, hers pressed against his chest, feeling his heart race beneath her palms. For a moment, nothing existed but this, the taste of him, the solid warmth of his body, the feeling of being alive, truly alive, for the first time in months. Then he groaned, in passion or pain. She couldn't tell, and pulled away. "We can't. I can't. You deserve better than a wanted man who'll bring nothing but trouble." "Maybe I don't want what I deserve," she said. "Maybe I just want to feel something real, even if it doesn't last." He cupped her face in his hands, thumbs brushing away rainwater or tears. "You don't know what you're asking." "Don't I?" She covered his hands with hers. "We're both ghosts, Jesse, both haunting lives that don't fit anymore." Maybe together we could be real again, even for a little while. The storm raged around them. But inside the barn, there was sudden stillness. Jesse rested his forehead against hers, breathing hard. 3 days are up, he said quietly. I should go. I know. But I can't. God forgive me. I can't leave you. This time, when he kissed her, it was gentle, almost reverent. Caroline melted into him, feeling safe for the first time since her father died. She knew it was an illusion. Harlan would be back, the world would intrude, and their borrowed time would end. But for now, in this storm-wrapped moment, she had found something worth the risk. When they finally parted, Jesse's eyes were dark with emotion. This won't end well, he warned. Men like me don't get happy endings. Then we'd better make the most of the middle, she said, and led him through the rain toward the house, toward warmth and shelter and whatever fragile hope two broken people could build together against the coming storm. Dawn came too soon, filtering through the kitchen window where Caroline sat watching Jesse sleep in the chair by the stove. They'd spent the night talking about his brother Miguel, about her parents, about dreams that had died and hopes that refused to, when exhaustion finally claimed him. She'd covered him with her father's old quilt and kept vigil, memorizing the planes of his face in repose. She was at the stove making coffee when he stirred, wincing as he straightened. Morning, she said softly. You didn't sleep. Someone had to keep watch. She handed him a cup, their fingers brushing. How's the pain? Manageable. He studied her over the rim. Caroline, about last night. Don't, she turned back to the stove. Don't apologize or take it back. Just let it be what it was. And what was it? She faced him then, chin raised. Two people choosing each other, even if just for a storm. That's more than some folk get in a lifetime. Before he could respond, hoofbeats thundered into the yard. Caroline's blood turned cold as she peered out. It's Harlan, with 3 men. Jesse was already on his feet, checking his pistol. She'd returned it to him last night. Another line crossed. How many bullets do you have? 4. His face was grim. Not enough for a real fight. Then we don't fight. Caroline grabbed her shawl. You hide. I'll handle this. Caroline, trust me. She squeezed his hand briefly. Please. He disappeared into the back room as she stepped onto the porch. Harlan and his men had spread out, hands near their weapons. Deputy, she called. Back so soon. Miss Grant. Harlan dismounted, eyes scanning the windows. Had reports of someone matching Colton's description in the area. Thought I'd check if you'd remembered anything. I told you yesterday. I haven't seen anyone. One of Harlan's men, a weasel-faced fellow, pointed at the house. Smoke from the chimney. Awful early to be cooking for one person. I rise early. Always have. Harlan stepped closer, close enough that she could smell the tobacco on his breath. You know what I think? I think you're hiding something, maybe someone. Mind if we search the house? You have no right. I have every right when pursuing a dangerous fugitive. His smile was cold. Unless you've got something to hide? Caroline's mind raced. If they searched, they'd find Jesse. If she refused, they'd know she was guilty. Either way, search all you want, she said, praying Jesse had found the root cellar entrance she'd shown him behind the pantry. You'll find nothing but a lonely woman trying to keep a failing ranch alive. Harlan nodded to his men. They pushed past her, boots heavy on the floorboards. Caroline followed, heart hammering as they opened doors, checked closets, even looked under the bed where her mother had died. The weasel-faced man lingered by the pantry, and Caroline forced herself to breathe normally. Nothing here, boss, one called out. Check again, Harlan ordered. He was watching Caroline, those pale eyes measuring every twitch. And the barn? You searched it yesterday. Things change. The men filed out, but Harlan lingered. You're a handsome woman, Miss Grant. Shame to see you wasting away out here alone. I manage. Do you? He moved closer, backing her against the wall. Woman like you could use protection. Dangerous men in these parts. Like you? His hand came up to touch her face, and she forced herself not to flinch. I'm the law. That makes me useful. Could be very useful to you if you were accommodating. Get out of my house. Think about it. His thumb traced her jaw. $500 for Colton, or my continued friendship. Either way, you'd benefit from cooperating. Boss, the weasel-faced man appeared in the doorway. Found something. Caroline's stomach dropped as Harlan followed his man outside. They gathered near the barn, examining something on the ground. Fresh boot prints, maybe, or blood Jesse had dripped despite their care. Mount up, Harlan called finally. We ride for Wakefield's place. He turned back to Caroline. I'll be watching. Miss Grant, Colton's close. I can smell it. And when I find him, he touched his gun. Well, dead men don't tell tales about who helped them. They rode off in a dust cloud, and Caroline's knees nearly buckled. She waited until they were specks on the horizon before running to the pantry. Jesse? The hidden panel opened, and he climbed out, face drawn. They know. They suspect. That's different. Not different enough. He steadied himself against the wall. I'm bringing danger to you. I should never have... Stop. She pressed her fingers to his lips. What's done is done. We need to think about what comes next. What comes next is I leave. Tonight, get as far from you as possible. You're still weak, and Harlan will be watching the roads. Better than him watching you. Jessie caught her hands. Caroline, you don't understand men like Harlan. He wants me, but now he wants you too. He won't stop until he gets one or both. Then we need to be smarter than him. She helped Jessie back to the kitchen. Mind working. They needed a plan. But first, you need proper rest and food. Real healing, not just surviving. I can't stay in your house. If they come back, there's an old line shack about a mile north, in the canyon. Pa used it during Roundup. No one's been there in months. She was already gathering supplies. You can recover there while we figure out our next move. Hour? He caught her arm. Caroline, there is no hour. I'm a dead man walking. The only question is how many people I take with me. Don't say that. It's the truth. I've been running for 3 years. I'm tired. His voice broke slightly. So damn tired. Maybe it's time to stop. Not like this. She cupped his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. Not when you've just started to feel alive again. You said so yourself last night. Last night was a dream. This is reality. Then let's change reality. The words came fierce and certain. Jessie, I've spent months sleepwalking through life, waiting to die or lose everything. You woke me up, made me remember what it feels like to want something. I won't go back to sleep now. He leaned into her touch, eyes closing. What do you want? Time, she whispered. Just a little more time with you. Is that so much to ask? From the world, yes. But he turned his head, pressing his lips to her palm. But I'm selfish enough to take it anyway. They loaded supplies onto her father's mule. Blankets, food, medical supplies, ammunition for his gun. The ride to the line shack was slow. Jessie gripping the saddle horn white-knuckled. But when they arrived, Caroline saw him relax slightly. The shack was well hidden, built into the canyon wall with a clear view of the approach. It's not much, she said, helping him inside. It's perfect. Defensive position, water nearby, multiple escape routes. He sank onto the narrow cot. Your father chose well. He was a careful man. She began unpacking supplies. I'll come every day, bring food and check your wound. If anyone asks, I'm checking the northern pasture for strays. Caroline. Jessie caught her hand as she turned to go. Why are you doing this? Really? She thought of all the things she could say. About loneliness, about grief, about the way he made her feel. Instead, she said simply, because everyone deserves a chance at redemption. Even outlaws, maybe especially outlaws. He pulled her down for a kiss, gentle and grateful. I don't deserve you. Probably not, she agreed, smoothing his hair back. but you're stuck with me anyway." The ride back was lonely, the house emptier than ever, but for the first time in months, Caroline felt purpose beyond mere survival. She had someone to protect, someone who needed her. It was dangerous, possibly fatal, certainly foolish, but it was also real and immediate, and hers. That night, she sat at her father's desk and wrote in the ledger, recording the day's events in the simple code he'd taught her. If something happened to her, at least there would be a record. A proof that Jessie Colton had existed as more than just a name on a wanted poster. Outside, coyotes howled at the rising moon, and Caroline allowed herself to imagine a different ending to their story. One where Jessie healed and stayed, where they built something together on this unforgiving land, where love was stronger than the past. She knew better. Of course, happy endings were for fairy tales, not for lonely women harboring fugitives. But for now, for these stolen days, she would pretend otherwise. And maybe, if they were very lucky or very clever, they could make pretense into truth. The candle burned low as she planned tomorrow's visit, and for the first time since her father's death, Caroline Grant smiled. The days fell into a rhythm. Each morning, Caroline rode to the line shack with supplies and medicine. Each evening, she returned home to keep up appearances. In between, she and Jessie worked to fortify his hiding place, setting up signals, planning escape routes, preparing for the inevitable day when Harlan would close in. Jessie's wound healed slowly but cleanly. By the second week, he was moving without grimacing, even helping repair the shack's leaking roof. They worked side by side in comfortable silence, and Caroline found herself treasuring these simple moments. Jessie hammering boards while she sorted supplies, sharing water from the same canteen, watching the sun paint the canyon walls gold. "You're different out here," she said one afternoon, watching him fashion a new door latch. "How so?" "Calmer. Like you can breathe." He paused in his work. "First time in 3 years I haven't been looking over my shoulder every second. It's almost like being a real person again." "You are a real person." "Am I?" He set down the hammer. "Sometimes I think Jessie Colton died with my brother. What's left is just shadows and gun smoke." Caroline moved to him, taking his face in her hands. "You're real to me, the most real thing in my life right now." He kissed her then, deep and desperate, and they came together on the narrow cot with an urgency born of borrowed time. Afterward, they lay entwined, skin cooling in the desert air. Caroline traced the scars on his chest, knife wounds, bullet grazes. A map of violence survived. "Tell me about before," she said. "Before everything went wrong." Jessie's arm tightened around her. "We had a little ranch down near the border. Nothing fancy, few horses, some goats, enough to get by. Miguel was going to marry the school teacher's daughter. I was saving to buy more land." His voice went distant. "Seems like someone else's life now. What would that Jessie think of this one? He'd think I was a fool, hiding out with a beautiful woman who should have turned me in weeks ago. Maybe he'd think you were lucky. Maybe." He pressed a kiss to her hair. "Caroline, we need to talk about what happens when—" "No." She sat up, pulling the blanket around her. "Not today. We agreed. No talking about endings until we have to. We have to soon. I'm healed enough to ride. Every day I stay puts you in more danger. Then we'll face it together." "That's what I'm afraid of." That evening, back at the ranch, Caroline found trouble waiting. 3 of her remaining cattle lay dead in the field, shot through the head. A note was nailed to her fence post. "Harboring fugitives is bad for business. Next time it won't be cattle." Caroline's hands shook as she read it. Harlan was escalating, trying to force her hand. She burned the note and dragged the cattle to the ravine, working until her muscles screamed. By the time she finished, the moon was high and her decision was made. The next morning, she packed everything valuable she could carry. "We're leaving," she announced when she reached the shack. "Both of us. Today." Jessie took in her grim expression. The packed bags. What happened? She told him about the cattle. Harlan's note. His face darkened. I'll kill him. No, that's what he wants. You to come after him, guns blazing. We're going to be smarter. She spread out a map her father had kept. There's a town called Sanctuary, 2 days north. No law there, just miners and merchants. We can get supplies, maybe find work, figure out our next move. Caroline, you can't just abandon your ranch. It's already gone. Has been since Pa died. I was just too stubborn to see it. She met his eyes. This is my choice, Jesse. Stay and die for dirt that won't grow anything, or take a chance on something else, on us. There might not be an us, not for long. Then we'll have whatever time we get. She began loading the mule. Unless you're planning to leave without me. You know I can't do that. His voice was rough. God help me, I can't leave you. They set out at dusk, taking the old smuggler's trail through the mountains. Jesse rode ahead, watching for ambush, while Caroline led the pack mule. The ranch disappeared behind them, and she didn't look back. Whatever lay ahead had to be better than slowly dying on land that had already claimed her parents. They camped that night in a box canyon, hidden from view. Jesse built a small fire while Caroline prepared a simple meal. The stars wheeled overhead, brilliant in the clear air. I used to know all their names, Jesse said, gazing upward. Miguel taught me, said our grandmother knew the old stories. From before the missions came. Tell me one. He pointed to a cluster of stars. Those are the 7 sisters, running from a hunter who wanted to possess them. They ran so far and fast, they flew right up into the sky. Did they escape? Depends who tells the story. Some say yes, they're free forever. Others say the hunter became a constellation too, always pursuing, never catching. He looked at her across the fire. I know how he feels. Am I the hunter or the sisters in this metaphor? Neither. You're the star they don't mention, the one who chose to stop running. They made love under those stars. The desert floor their bed, the vast sky their ceiling. Caroline had never felt so small or so infinite, reduced to sensation and expanded beyond her body's borders. Jesse whispered her name like a prayer, like a promise, like goodbye. Later, wrapped in blankets against the cold, she asked, "What's the first thing you'd do if you weren't wanted? If you could go anywhere, be anyone?" He was quiet so long she thought he'd fallen asleep. Then, find a piece of land somewhere nobody knew my name, build a house with my own hands, maybe raise horses. I was always good with horses. His hand found hers in the darkness. What about you? I'd want a garden. She said, flowers, not just vegetables, roses like my mother grew, and books, shelves and shelves of books, and someone to read them with on winter evenings. That sounds nice. It sounds impossible. Maybe, but impossible things happen sometimes. He pulled her closer. 6 weeks ago, I was bleeding out in a barn. Never thought I'd see another sunrise, much less what? Much less find someone worth changing for, worth trying to be better for. Caroline's throat tightened. Jesse, I know we don't talk about endings, but Caroline, if something happens, nothing will happen. If it does. He continued firmly. I need you to know something. These weeks with you, they've been worth everything that came before. Every bad choice, every bullet, every mile of running. If it all led here, to you, then maybe it meant something after all. She kissed him to stop the words, to stop the feeling that he was already saying goodbye, but even as he responded, pulling her beneath him with renewed passion, she felt time slipping away like sand through their fingers. In the morning, they'd continue toward Sanctuary. They'd find a way to build something new from the ashes of their old lives. They had to, because the alternative, letting Harlan or the past or the world tear them apart, was unthinkable. But for now, in this hidden canyon under ancient stars, they had each other. Caroline held tight to Jesse's solid warmth and tried not to think about hunters and prey, about stories that ended badly, about the dawn that would come too soon. Instead, she thought about impossible things, about gardens and horses and winter evenings, about 2 broken people who'd found each other in the desert and decided that was miracle enough, The fire died to embers. The stars wheeled on, and somewhere in the darkness, a coyote sang of loneliness and longing. But Caroline and Jesse weren't alone anymore, and that made all the difference. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. For now, that was enough. They never made it to Sanctuary. Harlan and his men were waiting at Devil's Pass, the only route through the mountains. Caroline saw the ambush a moment before Jesse did, sunlight glinting off rifle barrels in the rocks above. "Ride!" Jesse shouted, wheeling his horse around. But it was too late. Gunfire erupted, echoing off the canyon walls. Caroline's mule screamed and went down. She threw herself behind a boulder as bullets whined overhead. "Come on out! Colton!" Harlan's voice rang across the rocks. "You're surrounded. No point in getting the lady killed too." Jesse had taken cover behind a fallen log, returning fire with deadly precision. One of Harlan's men cried out and tumbled from his perch, but they were outnumbered 4-1, and Jesse was running low on ammunition. "Let her go," Jesse called back. "This is between you and me." "Nothing's just between you and me anymore." Harlan's laugh was ugly. "Miss Grant made her choice. Now she'll live with the consequences, or die with them." Caroline spotted movement to their left, one of Harlan's men trying to flank them. She grabbed the rifle from the dead mule's pack and fired. The man ducked back, cursing. "That's my girl," Jesse muttered, but his face was grim. "Caroline, when I tell you to run, I'm not leaving you. You have to head back the way we came. There's Another volley of gunfire cut him off. Jesse grunted, and Caroline saw blood bloom on his shoulder. "Jesse!" "I'm fine. Just a graze." But his shooting arm hung useless. Caroline's mind raced. They were trapped, outgunned, with nowhere to run. Unless... She remembered something her father had told her about this pass. During Apache raids, settlers would sometimes trigger rock slides to block pursuit. "Cover me," she told Jesse, then sprinted for the mule's body. Bullets kicked up dust around her as she grabbed the dynamite they'd brought for clearing boulders, supplies for their new life that might save their old ones. "What are you doing?" Jesse hissed as she scrambled back. "Changing the odds." She pointed to the cliff face above Harlan's position. "Those rocks are already loose. One stick in the right spot." Understanding dawned in his eyes. "You'll bring half the mountain down. Better than letting them pick us off." She was already preparing the fuse. "Can you keep them busy?" Jesse shifted the gun to his left hand. Always was better with my left anyway. He laid down covering fire while Caroline worked her way up the slope. Her heart hammered as bullets sang past. 20 feet. 30. There, a deep crack in the rock face, right where the weight pressed heaviest. She jammed the dynamite deep, lit the fuse, and ran. "Get down!" she screamed, diving behind the largest boulder she could find. Jesse was already moving, half running, half crawling toward her. The explosion shook the earth. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the mountain began to move. It started as a rumble, pebbles dancing down the cliff. Then larger rocks joined them. Then boulders the size of wagons. Harlan's men screamed, scrambling for safety. But there was nowhere to go. Tons of stone crashed down, filling the pass with dust and thunder. When the dust cleared, half the canyon was blocked. One of Harlan's men lay crushed beneath a boulder. Another had fled. But Harlan himself stood in the clear, face twisted with rage, pistol trained on them. "You bitch," he snarled. "You'll hang for this, both of you." Caroline rose slowly, rifle steady in her hands. "I don't think so. You won't shoot a lawman. You stopped being law the minute you killed my cattle. Threatened me. You're just another bully with a badge." Harlan's gun swung toward her. Time slowed. Caroline saw his finger tighten on the trigger, saw Jesse struggling to raise his own weapon with his wounded arm. She knew with crystal clarity that one of them would die in the next heartbeat. The choice was no choice at all. She pulled the trigger. Harlan staggered, looking down at the spreading red stain on his chest with almost comical surprise. His gun fell from nerveless fingers. You shot me." You gave me no choice, Caroline said quietly. Harlan dropped to his knees, then pitched forward into the dust. He twitched once and was still. The silence that followed was deafening. Caroline lowered the rifle, hands shaking now that it was over. She'd killed a man, shot him dead without hesitation. She waited for the guilt, the horror, but felt only a vast emptiness. Caroline. Jesse was beside her, pulling her into his arms despite his wounded shoulder. You saved us. I killed him. He would have killed you, both of us. He tilted her chin up. You did what you had to do. That's all any of us can do. She buried her face in his chest, breathing in the familiar scent of him mixed with gunpowder and blood. What happens now? Now we get out of here before his men come back. Jesse was already moving, gathering what supplies survived. Can you ride? Yes. They took Harlan's horse. No point in leaving good horse flesh. And Jesse's mount. Everything else was lost in the rock slide or scattered across the pass. Caroline didn't look at Harlan's body as they picked their way through the debris. That part of her life was over now. They rode hard, pushing the horses despite Jesse's injury. By nightfall, they'd put miles between themselves and the ambush site. Jesse was swaying in the saddle, face gray with pain and blood loss. We need to stop, Caroline said. Not yet. Need more distance. You'll bleed to death trying to prove how tough you are. She found a cave, really just an overhang of rock, but it would shelter them for the night. Jesse nearly fell from his horse. Caroline caught him, staggering under his weight. Easy. I've got you. She cleaned and bound his wound by firelight, trying not to think about how much blood he'd lost. The bullet had passed through cleanly, missing anything vital, but he needed rest and proper doctoring. We should have gone to sanctuary first thing, Jesse muttered, fever-bright eyes watching her work. I should have left you alone. You'd be safe on your ranch, slowly starving on land that wouldn't grow hope, let alone crops. She smoothed his hair back. I made my choice. Jesse, I'd make it again. Even now? After what happened? Especially now. She lay beside him, careful of his shoulder. I spent months feeling nothing, being nobody, just going through the motions of living. Then you showed up and reminded me I had a heart, that it could still want things, feel things, choose things. You chose a hard road. Maybe, but it's my road, our road. She kissed him gently. Rest now. I'll keep watch. But Jesse caught her hand. Caroline, I need to tell you something. About my brother. You don't have to. Yes, I do. His grip tightened. What I told you before was true, but not all of it. Miguel was holding that horse for a friend, but the friend set him up, claimed Miguel stole it, collected the reward money. His voice turned bitter. That friend was Antonio Vasquez, my partner who betrayed me. Same man. He got my brother killed for 30 pieces of silver, then years later tried to do the same to me. Caroline's heart ached for him. Did you find him? After he betrayed you? No. He disappeared after the ambush. Probably living high somewhere on blood money. Jesse's jaw clenched. I used to dream about killing him, making him pay. But lately... Lately? Lately I dream about other things. Gardens, horses, you. He managed a weak smile. Turns out living well might be better revenge than a bullet. Then let's live well. Caroline whispered. Let's find somewhere they've never heard of Jesse Colton or Caroline Grant. Somewhere we can be whoever we choose to be. After today, they'll be looking for you too. You killed a deputy marshal. A corrupt one. There's a difference. Not to the law. Caroline was quiet, absorbing this truth. She was an outlaw now, as wanted as Jesse. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, she felt oddly free. Then we'll be outlaws together, she said finally. Watch each other's backs. Build something new where no one knows our names. You make it sound possible. It is possible. We just proved that. We're alive, against all odds. That has to count for something. Jesse pulled her closer with his good arm. Everything, he murmured against her hair. It counts for everything. Outside their cave, coyotes howled at the rising moon, but inside, wrapped in each other and their stubborn hope. Caroline and Jesse began to plan a future neither had dared imagine. It would be dangerous, difficult, maybe impossible, but it would be theirs, and that was all that mattered. The fire burned low. The desert night grew cold, and two outlaws held each other in the darkness, no longer running from the past but toward something better, something worth the price they'd paid to find it, something like home. The trial took place in Santa Fe, in a courthouse that smelled of old wood and fear. Caroline sat in the defendant's chair, hands folded in her lap, watching dust motes dance in the afternoon light. Beside her, Jesse wore chains that clinked every time he moved. They'd been captured 2 weeks after Harlan's death, betrayed by a store clerk who recognized Jesse from the wanted posters. "The defendant will rise," Judge Morrison commanded. He was a stern man with silver whiskers and cold eyes. Caroline stood, chin raised. She'd lost weight in jail, but her gaze remained steady. Jesse had wanted to take all the blame, claim he'd forced her to help him. She'd refused. Whatever came, they would face it together. "Jesse Colton," the judge continued, "you stand accused of murder, robbery, and evading justice. How do you plead?" "Guilty," Jesse said clearly. "To all charges." A murmur ran through the packed courtroom. Caroline saw townspeople who'd come for the spectacle, reporters scribbling notes, lawmen with hard faces, no friendly faces, no one who knew them as anything but outlaws. "Caroline Grant, you stand accused of aiding a fugitive in the murder of Deputy Marshal Harlan. How do you plead?" Caroline's court-appointed lawyer, a nervous young man named Peterson, stood. "Your Honor, we'd like to present evidence that Deputy Harlan was corrupt, that he threatened Miss Grant, killed her livestock, and—" "How does the defendant plead?" the judge repeated impatiently. Caroline looked at Jesse. His dark eyes held hers, full of love and sorrow and fierce pride. She'd do it again, she realized. Every choice that led here. "Not guilty," she said. "To murder, I shot Harlan in self-defense, but guilty to helping Jesse. I'd do that again too." The judge's gavel cracked. The defendant will refrain from commentary. The trial proceeded swiftly. The prosecution painted Caroline as a desperate woman seduced by a dangerous outlaw. They had witnesses. The store clerk, one of Harlan's surviving men who claimed they'd been ambushed without provocation. No one mentioned Harlan's threats or his corruption. Dead lawmen, it seemed, were always heroes. Peterson did his best. He called character witnesses who testified to Caroline's good standing before her father's death. He presented evidence of the ranch's debts, suggesting desperation rather than criminality. But Caroline could see it wasn't enough. The jury, 12 men who looked like they'd decided her guilt before sitting down, barely listened. Then, unexpectedly, Peterson called a final witness. The defense calls Maria Vasquez. Caroline didn't recognize the name until she saw the woman, middle-aged, wearing black, walking with quiet dignity to the witness stand. Jesse had gone rigid beside her, chains rattling as he leaned forward. "Mrs. Vasquez," Peterson began. "How do you know the defendants?" "I'm Antonio Vasquez's widow," she said, accent soft but clear. "My husband, he did terrible things. Got Miguel Colton killed for reward money. Tried to do the same to Jesse." The courtroom erupted. The prosecutor objected. The judge called for order. But Maria continued speaking, voice rising over the chaos. "I have proof." She pulled papers from her bag. Letters where Antonio bragged about setting up both brothers, about working with corrupt lawmen like Harlan. "I came forward because—" Her eyes found Jesse. "Because I couldn't live with the guilt anymore. Miguel was a good boy. He deserved justice." The judge examined the letters while the courtroom buzzed. Caroline reached for Jesse's chained hands under the table, feeling them tremble. "Why didn't you come forward sooner?" the prosecutor demanded when allowed to cross-examine. "I was afraid. Antonio said Harlan would kill me if I talked." "But when I heard Harlan was dead," she straightened, "I decided it was time for truth." Her testimony didn't erase Jesse's crimes, but it reframed them. A grieving brother seeking justice in a corrupt system. The jury actually listened now, some looking troubled. In his closing argument, Peterson painted a picture of two people driven to extremes by circumstances beyond their control. Jesse Colton took the law into his own hands when the law failed his brother. Caroline Grant defended herself against a corrupt official who threatened her life. If we cannot find mercy for those the system has failed, what justice can any of us expect? The prosecutor's rebuttal was harsh, but less certain than before. The revelation about Harlan's corruption had shaken things. The jury deliberated for 2 days. Caroline and Jesse waited in separate cells, unable to even see each other. She pressed her palm against the cold stone wall, imagining Jesse on the other side doing the same. When the verdict came, the courtroom was silent as a grave. In the matter of Jesse Colton, the foreman read, "We find the defendant guilty of all charges." Caroline's heart sank. However, given the evidence of corruption and provocation, we recommend mercy in sentencing. In the matter of Caroline Grant, on the charge of murder, we find the defendant not guilty by reason of self-defense. Caroline sagged with relief. On the charge of aiding a fugitive, guilty with recommendation for leniency given the circumstances. Judge Morrison looked displeased but bound by the jury's decision. "Jesse Colton, I sentence you to 5 years imprisonment with possibility of early release for good behavior. Caroline Grant, 6 months imprisonment, sentenced to begin immediately." The gavel fell like thunder. They had one moment as the bailiffs led them away. Jesse caught Caroline's hands despite the chains. "Wait for me," he whispered urgently. "I know I have no right to ask, but I'll wait," she promised. "However long it takes." "I love you," he said, the first time he'd spoken the words aloud. "I love you too." Then they were pulled apart, led to different doors, different fates. Prison was harder than Caroline had imagined. The women's section of the territorial prison was small, cold, filled with prostitutes and thieves who initially saw her as an easy mark. But the same steel that had let her face down Harlan served her here. She worked in the laundry, kept to herself, and counted days. Letters were allowed once a month. Jesse's were brief but precious. "Caroline, I'm learning to read better. The chaplain helps. I want to be able to read those books with you someday. All my love. Jay, my darling. They have me working in the stables. The horses don't care what I've done. I'm saving every penny of the wages. For our future. Always yours. Jay, dearest Caroline. 2 years down. The warden says I'm a model prisoner. Maybe early release is possible. I dream of gardens. Wait for me. Forever yours. Jay." Caroline wrote back about small things. The robin that nested outside her window. The books she borrowed from the prison library. The plans she made for when they were free. She never wrote about the nights she cried into her thin pillow, or the fear that he'd change his mind. Find someone else. Forget the promises made in a courtroom. 6 months passed slowly, but finally ended. Caroline emerged into autumn sunlight, thinner but unbroken. Maria Vasquez was waiting with a wagon. "I owe you both this much," Maria said simply. "Come, I have a place you can stay." The place was a small cabin on Maria's property, payment for Caroline helping with the ranch work. It was honest labor. And slowly, Caroline rebuilt herself. She saved every penny, visited Jesse when allowed, and held on to hope with both hands. 3 years. 3 years of letters and brief visits through bars. 3 years of telling herself it was worth it. They were worth it. Some days she believed it. Others, she wondered if they were fools, clinging to a dream born of desperation and desire. Then, on a spring morning when wildflowers painted the desert gold, Caroline stood outside the prison gates, her heart hammered as she waited, hand shading her eyes against the sun. The gates opened. A man walked out, carpetbag in hand, moving with the careful steps of someone remembering freedom. He was thinner, his hair touched with premature gray, but his eyes were the same, dark and deep and fixed on her like she was the only thing in the world worth seeing. "Jesse," she breathed. He dropped the bag and ran. She met him halfway, and then they were kissing, clinging, crying, neither caring who saw. He lifted her off her feet, spinning her in the dusty road while she laughed through her tears. "You waited," he said wonderingly when he set her down. "You actually waited." "I told you I would." She touched his face, relearning the planes and angles. "I'd have waited forever." "No more waiting," he promised. "No more running. Just us, building that life we talked about." "Where?" "There's a town called Haven, up in Colorado. They need a blacksmith and a school teacher. Nobody asks about the past there." He pulled something from his pocket, a simple gold ring. "I made this in the prison shop. It's not much, but Caroline Grant, will you marry me? Will you be Caroline Colton and make an honest man of me?" "Yes," she said, laughing and crying at once. "Yes, to all of it." He slipped the ring on her finger, and it fit perfectly, like they fit, two broken people who'd found wholeness in each other. They married that afternoon in a little chapel, Maria Vasquez as their witness. Then they loaded their few possessions and headed north, toward mountains and possibilities and a future written by their own hands. The past would always shadow them. But as the miles rolled away, and Jessie reached for her hand on the wagon seat, Caroline knew they'd found something worth every hard mile traveled. Not redemption, exactly, but something better, a second chance, a chosen family, a love that had survived bullets and bars and everything the world could throw at them. And that, Caroline thought as Jessie began to sing an old Mexican love song he'd learned from his brother, was its own kind of justice, the only kind that really mattered in the end. Haven, Colorado, bloomed with spring wildflowers when Caroline and Jessie Colton arrived. The town nestled in a valley between snow-capped peaks, its main street bustling with miners, merchants, and families building new lives far from whatever they'd left behind. No one asked questions about the past here. Everyone was too busy facing forward. Jesse set up his blacksmith shop on the edge of town, the ring of his hammer on anvil becoming a familiar sound. Caroline took the teaching position at the one-room schoolhouse, delighting in the eager faces of children hungry to learn. They rented a small house with a view of the mountains and space for a garden. "It's not much," Jessie said their first night, looking around the bare rooms. "It's everything," Caroline corrected, pulling him close. "It's ours." Those first months were golden. Jessie's skill with horses and metal quickly earned respect. Caroline discovered a gift for teaching, patient with struggling readers, firm with troublemakers. In the evenings, they'd sit on their porch, Jessie playing a guitar he'd traded work for, Caroline reading aloud from books ordered from Denver. The garden came slowly. Caroline planted roses from Cutting's Mrs. Morrison, the minister's wife, shared vegetables for the table, wildflowers transplanted from mountain meadows. Jessie built raised beds to protect from rabbits, strung wire against deer. Together, they coaxed life from soil that had never known their heartbreak. "Look," Caroline said one morning, pointing to green shoots pushing through dark earth. "The roses are coming up." Jessie wrapped his arms around her from behind, chin on her shoulder. "Your mother would be proud." "I think she would." Caroline leaned into his warmth. "I think they all would. Even Pa, stubborn as he was." Not everything was easy. Jessie still woke from nightmares, reaching for a gun that wasn't there. Caroline sometimes froze when lawmen passed through town, afraid someone would recognize them. The shadow of the past stretched long, but there were more good days than bad. Jessie learned to read properly, laboring over McGuffey's Reader by lamplight until he could manage newspapers, then novels. Caroline taught him poetry, Whitman and Dickinson and old Spanish verses his grandmother might have known. He taught her to ride like the wind, to track deer, to find water in dry country. 1 year became 2. The house filled with furniture Jessie built, curtains Caroline sewed, books and music and laughter. The roses bloomed red and white, climbing the porch posts. Children from school visited to see Mrs. Colton's flowers, staying for cookies and stories. We should tell them, Jessie said one evening after a particularly boisterous visit from the Miller twins. Tell them what? Caroline was knitting, needles clicking contentedly. The truth, about who we were, before someone else does. Caroline's hands stilled. Do you think someone will? Maybe. Probably. The West is big, but not that big. He stared into the fire. I don't want to live waiting for the past to find us. Better to face it honest. They told the minister first, sitting in his study on a rainy afternoon. Reverend Morrison listened without interrupting, his face grave but not unkind. So, you see, Jessie finished, we're not who you thought we were. None of us are, the minister said finally. The question is, who are you now? The story spread, as stories do in small towns. Some families pulled their children from school. Others stopped bringing horses to Jessie's forge. But more surprising were those who stayed, who nodded and said they'd suspected something but didn't care. Hell, half this town's running from something, old Pete the miner said, spitting tobacco juice. Least you two are trying to build something better. The school board met to discuss Caroline's position. She sat outside, hands folded, prepared to lose everything again. But when they called her in, the chairman, a tough woman named Ruth, who'd buried 2 husbands and run their mine herself, simply said, Can you still teach these young'uns their letters? Yes, ma'am. Then get back to it. Lord knows they need all the help they can get. That night, Jessie found Caroline crying in the garden. Happy tears, she assured him. Seeing his alarm, I never thought we'd find this. People who judge us for who we are now, not who we were then. Maybe that's what redemption really is, Jessie said, pulling her close. Not erasing the past, but building something better from it. The seasons turned. Jessie's business thrived as word spread of his skill and honesty. Caroline's students won the regional spelling bee. Their garden became a showplace. Visitors coming just to see the roses that bloomed impossibly bright in the mountain air. 3 years after arriving in Haven, on a perfect June morning, Caroline stood before the mirror in her best dress. Not the worn calico she'd married Jessie in, but blue silk bought with her teaching money. Today was special. Today, they were finally going home. Not to the old places. Her father's ranch was sold, his land now part of a larger spread. The towns that had known them as outlaw and accomplice had moved on to new scandals. But Maria Vasquez had written that she was ill, wanted to see them once more. And there was something else, something Jessie needed to do. They took the train south, marveling at how the world had changed. What had been a dangerous 2-week journey now passed in days. Jessie held Caroline's hand as familiar landscapes rolled by, each mile carrying them closer to memories they'd tried to leave behind. Maria was thinner but still strong, greeting them with tears and embraces. She'd prepared a feast, neighbors invited who remembered Miguel, who wanted to meet the brother who'd survived. There were tears, but also laughter, music, stories of boys who'd dreamed of better lives. The next day, Jessie and Caroline rode to the cemetery. Miguel's grave was well tended, Maria's doing. Jessie knelt in the dusty earth, one hand on the simple headstone. I brought her, Hermano, he said quietly. The one I told you about in my letters. We made it. Miguel, we found our second chance. Caroline knelt beside him, laying roses from her garden on the grave. Thank you, she whispered, for having a brother who wouldn't let the world break him. Not completely. They stayed a week, helping Maria, visiting old places made new by time's passage. The Grant Ranch looked small and shabby under another's care. The barn where Caroline had found Jessie was falling down. Even the memories seemed faded, like old photographs left in the sun. No ghosts, Caroline said wonderingly as they rode away. I thought there would be ghosts. The ghosts were in us, Jessie replied, and we let them go. Back in Haven, their house seemed even more precious for having left it. The roses bloomed in wild profusion, as if celebrating their return. Students ran to greet Caroline. Ranchers brought horses they'd saved for Jesse's sure hands. That night, as they lay entwined in their bed, windows open to the mountain breeze, Caroline said, "We did it, didn't we? We actually did it." Did what? Found home, made a life, chose love over fear. She traced the scar over his ribs, that old wound that had brought them together. Proved that people can change, can be better than their worst moments. "Is that what we proved?" Jesse caught her hand, kissing her palm. "I thought we just proved that two stubborn people can be too ornery to quit." Caroline laughed, the sound bright as water. "That too." Outside, coyotes sang their ancient songs, but inside, two people who'd found each other in darkness rested in the light they'd built together. No more running, no more fear. Just the patient work of tending what matters, gardens and horses, children and community. The daily choice to face forward rather than back. "I love you, Caroline Colton." Jessie murmured against her hair. "I love you too, Jessie Colton," she replied, forever and then some. And in a house full of books and music, where roses climbed toward the stars and every dawn brought new possibilities, forever seemed not only possible, but promised. Written not in wanted posters or court documents, but in the simple acts of living, loving, and refusing to let the past define the future. They'd been the outlaw and the rancher's daughter. Now they were simply Jessie and Caroline Colton of Haven, Colorado, blacksmith and teacher, husband and wife. Proof that sometimes, against all odds, love really is stronger than everything that would tear it down. In the garden, roses bloomed impossibly bright, reaching always toward the sun. Thank you for listening to this tale from the Wild West Campfire. Where are you enjoying this story from? Let us know in the comments below so we can connect with listeners around the world. Don't forget to subscribe to Wild West Campfire for more stories of love, redemption, and adventure from the American frontier. Share your thoughts about Jessie and Caroline's journey. We'd love to hear what touched your heart in their story.